This winter meeting a week ago was something that we debated in the Bureau. Could have been cancelled. There were many who were pushing for cancellation of our Bureau meeting. So the Bureau decided that it was wise to be here. I am actually happy that this meeting took place. I'm actually extremely happy on how it deployed. You will be not surprised that we thought of all possible scenarios before this Bureau meeting. We thought, will there be violence? Are there any security concerns which we have to take care of? And which we did, because we worked very closely with the Austrian authorities in making sure that there is security outside the Eldenplatz, inside the rooms here. We looked at all possible scenarios. Will there be lots of disruptions during the meetings, points of order? We have here our colleagues from the UK Parliament who help us with the rules of procedures. We made lots of contingency planning, thinking that the proceedings of this meeting will be totally disrupted and big difficulties will take place. I must say that at the end of this meeting, we're getting towards the end of it, I'm extremely pleased on how we ended up in this meeting. I think everybody made strong points. Those who had to hear, hopefully have heard them. And I think that the pulse, the heart of this assembly is pulsing very strong, I must say. There's been a lot of events during these days. The youth forum has had a parallel annual session almost. They've had a lot of meetings. They've elected a new chair. They've had a lot of meetings here in Austria. They have been active also in the different committees. There's been meetings of the ad hoc committees on migration, the ad hoc committee on the fight against terrorism, the three committees. I'm trying to get at the fact that this assembly is an alive assembly, has done a lot of work. And yet, in this assembly since last year, since February 24 last year, there's been a lot of frustration. And there's a lot of frustration because, and I get it, because all of you would want to do something. All of us see what's happening. These atrocities that are taking place in Ukraine, the war of aggression of Russia against Ukraine, and each of us in our own respective roles, us in an institutional role, but mainly you as members of parliament, would like to contribute, would like to do something. And of course, you are frustrated because the tools that this assembly has are not the ones that are necessary to deliver the kind of damage, the kind of sanction, the kind of punch in the face to those who are making these aggressions that you would like to deliver. And I think we have put ourselves in this situation feeling, are we doing enough? Is it not enough? Vice President Pritchard mentioned he doesn't want to see a repeat of Warsaw and an assembly handcuffed in his rules. And he's right. We shouldn't be handcuffed by our rules in trying to sanctions those who have violated all the principles of the Helsinki Final Act. But I have also good news for you. This assembly is an assembly of politicians. This is a parliamentary assembly. You are politicians. And politicians speak, politicians make visits, politicians make resolutions, politicians make actions. And these acts, these visits, these resolutions have been present in the assembly, and you have an impeccable track record on the issue of Ukraine since 2010. In 2014, Senator Benkar is right here, drafted a resolution in Baku saying that there are clear, gross, uncorrected violations of the Helsinki Final Act made by the Russian Federation, calling who is the aggressor, against Ukraine. This language was unprecedented, and it's been unprecedented up to last year. In many UN bodies, in other bodies, they were saying the war in and or the crisis in and around Ukraine. Nobody had the courage to call spade to a spade. This assembly has called spade to a spade, thanks to the resolution of Senator Benkari in 2014. Since the very beginning, our track record on Ukraine is impeccable. We have nothing to be sorry about. We have done everything. The entire arsenal that a parliamentary assembly made of 323 parliamentarians can deliver on this issue has been exhausted. And beyond that, we have outpaced the possibilities that you have as a parliamentary assembly. Plus, because we're talking about, okay, but have we really sanctioned those who are doing these atrocities? Well, I have news for you. You've been sanctioning them not from last February. You've been sanctioning them since 2010. Since 2010, this assembly has no longer had a vice president for Russia in the Bureau. There's always been one since it's the beginning. There was Gennady Zelezhnov, the president of the Duma, was vice president. There was Kozlov, another vice president. But since 2010, you have sanctioned those who are violating the Helsinki Final Act with your political instrument, which is vote them down. None of them in the Bureau. Plus, from 2010, there's been not one amendment, not one resolution, not one supplementary items proposed. And there were some very reasonable ones on fascism, on, fight. So something that you would question, okay, but should we not say that, like Nazis is terrible? But even those, because they were presented by that country, you have voted them down. So I am trying to get at the fact that you have sanctioned the Russian Federation from 2010 with the tools that you have at your disposals, which is politics. You are an assembly of politicians. And why you've managed to do that? Because this assembly votes by majority. That's the strength of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly. It votes by majority. So you can sanction and you can say anything because you have this tool. Unlike this Parliamentary Assembly, those upstairs in the first and the fifth floor, there is upstairs a expanded ministerial meeting of permanent representatives and political directors of the OSCE. They vote by consensus. The OSCE is an intergovernmental organization that votes by consensus. That organization, the OSCE, we are in the same organization, since 2002, they have not been able to pass a political resolution at the ministerial meeting. 2002, 21 years, they have not been able to do that. We have been able to do this every single year. Every single year we said, we reiterate Ben Cardin's resolution, there is clear, gross, uncorrected violation. We said it every year by majority. The OSCE, by consensus -1, has not managed to do that. So we have here managed to do things that the OSCE cannot even think about. Why should we cry over ourselves, or should we, as correctly was said, put ourselves in a catch-22 situation thinking that we have failed to do anything? We have not failed to do anything. We are frustrated because we did not manage to pass in the standing committee, this body, which is an administrative body that correctly talks about whether the Secretary General behaves or does good to the staff, passes the budget. That's, let's say in-house business, in-house business. And I think today was actually a very good standing committee because we've actually talked about what we should talk about in this business, whether the Secretary General works well, I'll get to that, or whether the Treasury is presenting a good budget. So this is what this body is about. It's about how we run the shop. But why you want to talk about the biggest issue that we have in front of us, the Russian war of aggression against Ukraine, and deliver there where it's impossible because there is the consensus -1 like there is in the OSCE. Why do you want to deliver there some sanctions that you will never manage to pass in this body? Because unfortunately here we do not have the teeth, the legal teeth, to pass this in the standing committee. There is an illegal way of passing anything, but then we would use let's say the Russian methodology, violating the rules to do something better. Do we need to put ourselves in a path of violating our own rule when we have all the tools, the political tools that you have amply used? That maybe some members are new and they don't remember, but you have done an incredible work in the last 12 years on this dossier and delivered every possible sanction to the Russian Federation. I would like to add something else. The Russian Federation in the governmental side uses the consensus rule to block the organization. So meetings of the human dimension in Warsaw didn't take place because they have to approve the agendas by majority. The budget for the last 2 years have not passed because they have to be approved by majority. What's the damage of the Russian Federation in this assembly? They've always passed the budget. They just said, I bet they will pass also next budget. They've always passed the budget. Here, they never blocked. And if they don't, by consensus -1, we can still pass the budget. But here, they've never blocked our budget. They've never blocked any activities. All the election observation missions that the president wants to do has taken place. So we have inflicted to them the biggest, let's say, tsunami of sanctions possible at the political level and paid no consequences at the administrative level. So it's just a success story. It's a success story that for God knows which mediatic incapacity that we've had or some miscalculation, we've managed to put ourselves in a trap thinking, oh, but we have failed. We are not managing to do something. We have not failed. So that's the news. Sorry, this is a little bit because this was a political meeting and I wanted to give you the outset of my intervention here. Of course, this is the standing committee that talks about in-house business, and that's the place where normally the Secretariat, the Secretary General, gets scrutinized together with the bureau members, the plenary. I normally report to the Assembly 6 times. 6 times I present my report. I receive questions like I did today. Today, it's actually the first time that it's a bit more lively because normally they just say, you're doing a great job, and then we move on. We have actually all on videos, all the times you said, we're doing a great job. Now, for the first time I hear there are some concerns, and I welcome them because I've always liked to use this opportunity when we have the Standing Committee, the Bureau, the plenaries, where I report. It's the occasion for you members, because you are my bosses. I'm elected by this body. So you are the ones who can actually exercise oversight. You are the end users of the product of the Secretariat. You are the ones who know, do we do a good job or not? Of course, you cannot scrutinize all the accounts, and that's why there is a financial audit of experts. Deloitte, I think, is one of the most reputable organizations who does a financial account and then just told you in flying colors. Actually, I would like to give you an anecdote that last week when the audit that was hired for these accounts presented its accounts to us, I asked them to do it simultaneously to me and the treasurer. The audit speaks Danish, also the treasurer is Danish. So I don't want to find out before. I need to find out when you inform also my political leader, so that if there is something wrong, we hear it before. I don't want to kind of sugarcoat the message. And the auditor said, flying colors, it's excellent, it's in front of you. So the financial account of this organization, according to a reputable organization, is excellent. Then there is the issues of how we service parliamentarians. But how we service parliamentarians, I come from business and I was in customer service. I normally test it if I speak 6 times, and since I've been Secretary General 42 times, I've reported to all of you, I test it from the feedback I get. If I send some colleagues to an election observation and they say, great job, we were great, we were happy with that. Or if I organize a committee and the committee on migration or terrorism says, fantastic visit, I get it that the feedback from the members is positive. I never had any signals that members were unsatisfied, and probably they are not, of the work of the Secretariat. So it came a little bit as a surprise, this kind of today's direct attack. But again, as I said before, I did welcome it because I think whenever there is any doubt, any suspicion, anything that you are not clear, you need to address it directly to me. And this is normal. I mean, I'm responsible to you for my work. I work in full transparency. If there are concerns, there's no need of going around and sending something that started as an audit to the Assembly. This thing I've known since August started as an audit to the Assembly. I had to protest to the proponents saying, sorry, you cannot audit parliamentarians. Parliamentarians will decide whether they perform well or not. So I said, if you really insist on doing an audit, you may consider doing an audit on the Secretariat, because we have to be accountable. So, oh, that's a great idea. We'll do an audit to the Secretariat. That's how it turned out to be. So you need to hear the full story. But again, I am extremely welcoming any scrutiny and any openness to anybody that wants to see what we do. I personally am convinced that the Standing Committee, the Bureau, who elects me to this position is the one best placed to say whether I and my staff does a good job. But if you say, well, we are too busy, we cannot really assess, then we will select in an open, transparent manner another Deloitte who knows the parliamentary working, because I really challenge anyone to say, well, we want to perform to see if you serviced well the members when they went to the election observation in Turkey. How do they do that? Did you give enough drivers, enough good briefings? Was Erdogan briefing them or not? I mean, how do you assess I think you are the ones who know better whether the service that was provided is good or is not good. But if the Bureau in Copenhagen, which will have thoroughly to go through this request, will conclude Well, why don't we give it a try? We need to find someone, and we will propose independent auditing companies that the standing committee will have to choose. Let's find someone to indeed go and scrutinize. Then why not? Maybe actually we will benefit from it because they will, and I think whoever will come as a Sherlock Holmes in all our accounts, in all our proceedings, in our emails, whatever, will actually say, well, wow, it's amazing what you managed to do with this little amount of resources that we give you. And when I come to the resources, the treasurer says, indeed, we need to take care of the staff and increase salaries. I'm all for it. For your information, the staff of the secretary, there's an average, because there is a lot of curiosity on the figures here. The average is around 5,000 euro, the salary of normally staff. It varies, but this is the average. But when it comes to the salary of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly staff, they are 20% less than the OSCE sister organization, and maybe even 30 or 40% less than the UN. And they are international civil servants. They've managed to do this job because, I don't know, maybe the Secretary General managed to say, good job, and motivates them and say, you'll get to go to a nice trip, so keep it up. The best is yet to come, but this best never comes, So that's how it is managed. And so whoever will scrutinize this will only come up with the conclusion, I'm convinced, that, wow, with so little money, you managed to deliver so much. So because I'm not a genius, if I'm told we don't increase the budget, we don't increase the contribution, the costs are rising, you need to put a mechanism to increase the salaries and increase the inflation.
Yes.
While 60% of our salary, 60% of our budget is in salaries. Yeah, I'm kidding. Yeah. 60% of our budget is in salaries, then, and you say, okay, remove from activities. In the long run, if you never change the total, and you say, take money from activities and put it in salary, what will end up is that we will give maybe never as good as OSCE and UN decent salaries, but then I will have to tell the staff, sorry, you cannot travel because I took away all the money from activities. How will that look like? The staff stays in Copenhagen and Vienna, doesn't work, and so we have to consider at some point that resources have to be put here because the inflation has not touched only the salaries. The inflation has touched exactly our line of work, which is hotel, fares, flights. That's where we spend our money. Flights, hotel, fares, conference room, interpreters. This is where we spend our money in activities. Our activities is I send my colleague to accompany Mark Pritchard in Moldova next week, and I have to pay for a flight, a hotel, and a conference room. So that's where, so if the costs are increasing, that's where it goes. It doesn't go somewhere else. So this is on that. I think I have responded to more. If this is the last point that was raised by the Latvian member of the delegation, which I agree with Farah, it's a bit strange that something comes out in this forum so direct, but I am a very transparent person and I don't mind. If there are concerns, especially I think what is behind that concern is much more than just what I've just told you there. This is very simple, when you have concerns of that type, you take the Secretary General by the ears, you lock him in a room and you say, look, we trust you, we've seen how you operate, but we have some concerns. Can you please explain? If the explanation is good, okay, continue. If the explanation is bad, we are all accountable here. Thank you very much.